all you need to do is go on Netflix right now and you will see that the theme of transhumanism and robotics and robots being the next step in our evolution, and this idea that robots are more superior and that humans are weak. You'll see that this theme and this trend is becoming increasingly popular. And I can recall, I'm 31 years old, and I can recall as a child one of my favorite movies, Short Circuit. Johnny Five is alive. That might trigger some memories. And I think about it when television really began, and has been this very popular theme since the beginning of film, of robotics. You're thinking back to movies like I, Robot and even Bicentennial Man with Robin Williams, God rest his soul. And even from there, from Short Circuit to those movies and all the other ones in between to now, to let's say like Chappie. Chappie's like a revamped Short Circuit, and even Westworld. All right, the HBO special. That's some people are speculating will be the next Game of Thrones. In all of these, the most general idea that's expressed through these narratives is that the robots are indeed superior to humans, that the robots, even furthermore stepping it up a bit, have a greater capacity to display humanity and virtues of humanity, to be more sensitive and conscious and have higher values than humans do. And there's this idea that's being proliferated that humans are actually quite weak and fickle, and especially Westworld is very much capitalizing this. I should let you know, for those that haven't seen all of Westworld, I won't give any big spoilers, but there are going to be some things I'll be mentioning, okay, that can be seen as a bit of a spoiler because it's taking some of the concepts that Westworld has been imparting towards the end of its show in the first season at least, okay? But going back to the point that there's this very heavy theme that robots are superior than the next step, and there's actually two themes. There's two ultimate, in my opinion, objectives that are met through the endless proliferation of these movies, all right? And one of them is that robots are better and they're the next step in evolution and they're just quicker. They can do more. They're more capable. They can live forever, and render us inferior, all right, and outdated. The other objective that's met and the other message that expressed is that they are to be all feared, such as Terminator, for example, and Skynet and all of this, and the image in our mind that is stained of robots invading the Earth and destroying all of humanity. So on one hand, we're being taught to fear these robots and to view the whole entire situation as being inevitable. Basically, that we are being taught that one day, eventually, technologies will get to this point, and everyone's talking about the singularity of artificial intelligence and self-replicating machines, and the inevitable possibility or probability that robots one day will take over or attempt to take over. And this is very much expressed through so much literature and film. All right, so on one hand, we're given all this reason and just taking in this information and being programmed to, on one hand, fear the machine, but then also being programmed to think, well, okay, if you can't beat them, and if one day this is inevitable and you're afraid of these big badasses like Terminator, he's, despite him being like the destroyer and whatever, like a lot of the enemies in that show that are the antagonists, despite them being the enemy, they still have this very much badass kind of aspect to them that's kind of cool, right? So on the other hand, now we're pretty much being taught that, like, okay, the only way to really meet this threat, and Elon Musk is very much behind this and driving this mentality as well. That yes, I believe that the robot future is inevitable, and the singularity is inevitable, and one day AI and all that they will move beyond the barriers of human control, and the only way we can really combat this is by becoming machine ourselves. The only way we can combat this is by upgrading ourselves. That's pretty much the message. And why wouldn't people want to, given all this programming that we've been undergoing? Why wouldn't people want to basically become that badass machine that's so much more evolved, so much more capable, that can live longer and just be upgradable at the drop of a coin or push of a button, okay? Why wouldn't they want to take that offer if it ends up being on the table, so that then they can also feel confident and strong and like they've got their ground covered regards this inevitable threat of the robot uprising. Now it's okay because we're robots too and we're ready to go. Alright, so there's the way that it's been portrayed through media and the effect this is having on our psychology, to me, is very interesting, and I can't help but view just based on the pure consistency and the amount of literature and film that's being put out there, and it's always exactly like I'm saying, it's depicted as these things are to be feared, but they're just so badass and cool, right? But it's inevitable, and it's this doomsday scenario, and that the only way to really combat it is to become machine, and then we're taught that machines are better than humans. And Westworld, now I'm going to go into Westworld. One interesting thing I was thinking, that is, if there is a transhumanistic agenda, and if you haven't heard of that term, transhumanism, it means transiting beyond the human form. Some people believe that it's not even a secret society anymore, so this is no tinfoil hat talking, okay? When I talk about Illuminati, these guys are in the open now, actively recruiting, because people have already been primed and programmed to accept the presence of these guys from childhood, ever since they started really pushing occult themes through television and literature as well. Now people are more than happy to look into that stuff and not really be as shocked by the content of what these guys get up to, okay? So let's say there is an agenda by the elite, the powers that be, those that watch from the dark, all right, and pull strings, because you've got to keep in mind the Freemasons and Illuminati, all these guys, there are a lot of people in positions of power, and we're talking media tycoons, we're talking oil tycoons, presidents, and all this, right? Let's say there is an agenda for transhumanism to prime the psychology of the people to believe that a robot uprising is inevitable and that we need to match this technology by becoming machines ourselves, becoming mechanized like androids. Initially, and that's the other thing that David Icke does talk about. He has a lot of extreme ideas, but he often is on point a lot of the time, especially when he talks about how they have been preparing people for a transhumanistic evolution or change. And it's first to start off with wearables, like watches. Holdables, like the phone, holdables, then wearables. So now they've taken this phone, this very integral part of our life, that to the point where our identity is, you could even say in some places with some people, it's more so dependent on the technology that's provided through our phones, right? Part of our identity with Facebook and social platforms and all this. So first it's holdables, then wearables. Now we have these little computers and these things in our watches, right? Wearables. And then it's implantables. And he says that this is a 3-tier step evolution of progress to get people gradually dipping their feet into the water, or like a frog in boiling water, and gradually turning up the degrees. So first we're just holding our technology, then we're just wearing our technology, and then we actually have our technology implanted or directly in our brain, directly allowing us to augment our reality and overlap this artificial world over the actual organic world. And we already have this technology. People talking about TED Talks with these things that we can wear that will literally, any surface we can use as a screen, playing games with graphics, beasts breaking through the wall, and it's all just being augmented in real time on the time-space continuum, on the organic world, which is pretty, we're there, people, we're fucking there, right? So let's say there is an agenda on afoot to push for this, and to push to eventually, it starts with chipping, in terms of the RFID chip for our protection, and that sets the precedent that, it's okay, it's normal now, it's acceptable now, people are doing it, they're already having things implanted in them. Why not just go a little bit further? Why not just go a little bit further and have something implanted in your brain? Wear some lens, Google Lens, so you can just blink and take pictures and watch stuff with your eyes. And then the next step is like Black Mirror, the Willow Grain, right? Having just a direct chip that can let you record information but also be monitored and have everything recorded and even hijackable and virusable as well. You got to keep in mind. So all of this is happening, and there's a lot of these ideas coming up over and over again, and there's a lot of actual research towards the foundations for these actual fictional technologies, some of them, and they're becoming decreasingly fictional as time progresses and increasingly more practical and real, because they are making advances with exactly these technologies that I am talking about, and doing a lot of research, and we're getting there. We're getting closer to that point. So this is the thing I was thinking when I was watching Westworld, and Westworld is pretty much the big one at the moment that's really pushing this idea. You know, if you've seen the scene where they're in the Cradle, and spoiler alert, I'm just going to let you know what the Cradle is about. When they're in the Cradle and they're looking at all the books with all the human consciousness encoded as music, and they're all very small books, relative, right? And the curator, Logan, pretty much explains to Dolores that, oh yeah, these humans are very predictable. Their algorithms are very simple, and they're just limited to their programming, that, to their very limited code. And it gives the idea that in that show, very dark show, it paints this picture that robots indeed are more conscious, that robots indeed, first they identify with humans by saying that they're stuck on their loops as well, but then they elevate them to the next power of status and stature by pretty much showing that these robots are capable of breaking away from their loops and developing consciousness and evolving in far more significant and complicated, complex ways than the humans, who are very simple creatures and stuck to their little books of coding. So there's very much this idea. But there's one thing I was thinking about recently, and this is more like an idea of, not a theory as such, but this could be a theory, but it's more so an interesting piece of fiction and just an exercise for just an idea to consider. In the show, they mention, after a while, Bernard comes to this revelation when he's talking to Ford inside, when he goes into the forge, or I think it's the forge, and he goes into the virtual simulation where they test everything first before they make it real to make sure it's all running smoothly. And he talks with Ford, and he has this revelation. He says, this whole time, we were trying to understand these machines and build these machines and encode them. And we're focusing on bringing in these guests this whole time to provide this experience for the guests and to further sophisticate these machines and improve them. And then he pretty much says, but what was actually happening was that it wasn't that way that it was happening. It was actually the other way around, that the hosts were decoding the humans. It wasn't about the experience for the humans and about improving the machines. It was about the machines and their experience of the humans, and the machines, the hosts, decoding and learning about the enemy, about the opposition, through these people coming to the park and doing just whatever the hell they want to do behind closed doors in a little pocket universe away from God's sight, right? As they said in the show. And that got me thinking, because recently I watched a video talking about advertising and Google and just the overall Internet of Things. And if you haven't heard that concept, look into it. The Internet of Things, and about how they want to make kind of like this smart grid so that everything is linked through the internet, everything is connected with the internet, so that every point on the map and everybody does become Big Brother unwittingly, whether they like it or not, because everything is connected on the Internet of Things. And I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about AI and how, we've heard reports like people who were homosexual, they didn't even know they were homosexual until they started having gay services and products and advertising advertised to them, which prompted them to look into it and actually be like, wow, actually I think I might be gay. It's like these algorithms that are hosting the experience when we are surfing the web and they're playing host. They're offering advertisements. They're offering doorways for us to go to this site, for us to look into this window. They're hosting this experience. It's like they're watching and they're observing and they're learning through these very detailed, complicated algorithms about who we are and what we want and what drives us and what's going to pull us in terms of the carrot, in terms of, have a look at this. Based on your search history, we have calculated that you would be interested in this program or product or service. And a lot of times it knows us better than we know ourselves. And I couldn't help but notice a parallel, couldn't help but notice a similarity here between that statement that was made on Westworld that the hosts were actually decoding the humans as to learn the opposition. And I thought, well, as people have discussed, there's a lot of parallels that obviously Westworld has, whether we're talking Nephilim and Anunnaki, whether we're talking about just typical tropes in film and breaking the stereotypes, and how to tell a good story and all of this. But I couldn't help but draw a parallel exactly to the idea that maybe the hosts are mirroring the internet and this new artificial intelligence, which is pretty much what it has become itself now, with all these algorithms that really does serve to understand its subject, just like the hosts understand the visitors. So do the hosting algorithms that host and offer these things to us understand the visitors online, right? And then it better caters to the visitor. And in the terms of the homosexual guy that found out he was gay through the prompting advertisements, it helps us understand who we are sometimes more than we do ourselves, which is also the premise of Westworld, helping the visitors explore and understand who they are. So I couldn't help but see the match there, a direct parallel and very a stark similarity in the principle that what if that is what it's pointing out, that the AI of the internet and these algorithms that we are getting so immersed in, it's kind of like the man in black being lost in the park and losing his identity to the point where he needs it to be real so that he can reclaim a sense of being real and being tangible and being alive, truly alive himself, that he wants to get to the point where the host can do damage back so that it's actually higher stakes and it's like reality, because he is so immersed in the park, just like humanity's consciousness and our focus and our time. A lot of it now is existing kind of in this kind of forge world, in this virtual simulation online, right? That this platform of reality we socialize through and connect with each other through. Some of us, many of us, we connect with each other more than we do in actual person, where now it's too awkward and we don't have control over everything, and we can't just send something and then take it back and delete it or edit everything and go over, you know what I mean? So it's quite interesting if you look at Westworld that way, that it's actually the hosts are these algorithms and it's the virtual world that we are lost in, that we can get away with saying and doing and looking into things that we otherwise couldn't do publicly. Just like the man in black says, man's able to exercise his demons outside of the watchful eye of the Lord, but little did he know that God was still tallying up his sins, right? Just like we can use the internet to be anonymous and bully and offend and push people to suicide, look into all manner of dark and fucked up things, and we have this anonymity, and it really does help us not just experience and discover who we are more, but it also helps further open the cage and unleash our beasts, because there aren't constraints. Just like in the park, there aren't constraints. You can do what you want. You can become whatever you become. So whatever is in your heart of hearts and whatever draws you to click and click, whatever you want to look into, type and type whatever you want to do, or in the terms of Westworld, click and click, choose your narrative pathways that you want to, and your ventures that you want to go on, and write and write, or do and do. You can choose what you want to do in the park. You can shoot, rape, kill, go on a quest, play hero, play villain, and it further takes whatever you are going in and consolidates it and feeds it, and feeds. If you go in as a beast, it feeds the beast and you become more of a beast, and you just, you know what I mean? So it discovers who you are, but it also feeds who you are, these opportunities without constraints in total anonymity to just keep becoming that thing to the worst extent possible. Okay? Very interesting when you look at it this way. That Westworld is very much kind of like the Western Hemisphere, you could even say, of the internet, but probably the whole hemisphere, really, because Westworld even does have Shigami World or Shogani World and all these different other Taj World. So and this is the idea that I had when I said that there's an idea that it could be used for fiction or just an exercise in imagination. Imagine, just like in the show, right? They're saying that the hosts or the hosting algorithms on the internet, let's just say they're the same thing. On Westworld, they're saying that they're there to decode the humans, and you end up discovering in the second season, spoiler alert, it's kind of hinted at in the first season, I think, but you end up discovering that they are learning about the opponent, the opposition, through people coming into the park, coming into the internet, making all these choices in secret, that it's recording everything, all the information, every single choice, just like the hats that the visitors wear. These algorithms are recording every single choice we make online, all right, or in the park, so as to further understand us strategically, who we are, our identity. If we are actually applying this to the internet and actually they're trying to kind of tell us in a very kind of different way that this is what's going on, one, the information that they would be gaining, it wouldn't just be used in terms of economical profit to better sell and advertise to us, but it could be used to crack down on any revolutionaries, anyone that actually wants to change the system or could pose a threat in changing the status quo and wanting to liberate people and change legislation and increase our freedoms and fairness and balance and justice. It could be used, and it already is being used, I believe, to much easier censor these people, to catch them in their tracks before things develop out of hand. But taking it one step further, let's say there is an agenda to end up merging us with the machine, because there's two different pathways to immortality. Okay, there's immortality in terms of the spirit and transcending the wheel of samsara, some believe, and purifying, like becoming less fixated on this dense plane of vibration, on the material world, becoming less attached to materiality, and even the things of the earthly life. You know, even becoming less attached to actual life itself, knowing that there's no such thing as death, it's all impermanent, and that the soul lives on forever. And that achieving this and truly becoming this awareness means that when you are reincarnated, you may be reincarnated on a level that matches your vibration, because you're less attached to this dense vibration reality of materialism. It doesn't make sense if you die. If you've cultivated this very light energy that's above all that shit, why would you come back to that shit when you no longer resonate with it? You would go to a lighter sphere that matches your frequency. So there's that idea of achieving immortality by perfecting the spirit and alchemy of the soul, and going from a very dense state of coal and becoming a diamond at the Kether of the crown, and earning your way up to team God, being part of consciousness itself, writing the laws and the algorithms, and having your own influence as a principality, as an angel, upon actual life forms on lower spheres. All right, that's the spiritual idea of immortality. Achieving immortality is actually escaping the physical confines of this dimension of vibration, this world, moving into lighter spheres. But it seems that mankind wants to keep everything in lockdown, wants to keep soul itself quarantined, and is trying, because we are destined to reach that point of singularity, at least in consciousness, in true spiritual unity, right? Going back to Godhead, because we are destined to naturally be driven towards that end. It's like it's trying to supplant that need, supplant that drive with fool's gold, with a superficial, artificial substitute, and pretty much saying, oh, no, the way that we're going to achieve immortality, the way that we're going to achieve living forever, is by going about it with this whole robot, becoming augmented, becoming an android, eventually purely machine, or half human, half machine, so that we can live forever in this material world. so that we can live forever in this dimension. And we probably would access different dimensions, I would suppose, with the machine. Things, if you had a machine mind, it would be different depending. But the idea is that one is about the soul, spirituality, consciousness itself. The thing is, as much as these shows are trying to convince us that robots are more humane and capable and superior of consciousness and values and caring, and that humans are actually the cold, insensitive machines, because that's the propaganda. The thing is, machines, if they're purely machine, will not have a soul, and even if it's more than half machine, I don't know if the soul would be able to fit into that vessel anymore. Just like the Nephilim apparently cannot fit into the normal human form, some suspect that they're trying to literally create these new kind of half artificial flesh suits in order to host certain energies and certain entities that can't actually fit into a normal human costume form, in a human body. So they're trying to create this kind of tweaked DNA and mixed with artificial augments and upgrades to allow different kinds of consciousness to be accessed and into that new conduit. Okay, so there's that idea, but that's not even necessary, that whole way of thinking, and that, it's possible, but it's not necessary. The point is that I don't know if I kind of doubt that your soul would be able to come back if you were mostly machine. Okay, because I believe it's a full body thing, and the whole entire energy balance of everything would be thrown out if you started replacing parts and really changing us in a very significant way, especially when you start changing our DNA. So we wouldn't spiritually evolve. We wouldn't return to that place of Godhead that many cultures around the world have talked about. We wouldn't transcend the wheel and achieve true immortality, where anything is possible, where everything is abundant and infinite, and everything is love. Instead, we will be trapped forever in a physical domain, not more caring and more capable and more superior and complex, but just stuck in this physical level. And we may function forever, but we would only function. There'd be no love. There'd be no love in it. We'd be purely left-brain masculine machines, which is exactly what we've been conditioned to be. You know what I mean? And anyone who's right brain these days, they say you've got ADD, give you Dexies to make sure you're stuck in your left. So you already are a machine in terms of your basic psychology, purely left brain masculine thinking. And now it's just a matter of changing the suit that we wear, going from a flesh suit to a metal suit. And you've got this happening, in a sense. You see the beginnings of this. And not only was Sophia already just, this is like a really huge thing to me. I'm surprised it wasn't covered in the media around the world or talked about beforehand. But I think it's the Philippines or somewhere that they've accepted Sophia, the robot, as the first ever, what do you call it? Samaritan or civilian with rights, with human rights. Okay, and they've accepted her as a civilian of the state or something like this. But they've given her the equal status to being human with rights. This is huge. It means they're setting up the precedent bit by bit and putting bricks in the right places to build this eventual outcome of there being machines living in society with equal rights and us becoming machines, which is, anyone with half a brain can see through all the propaganda, that's what they're leading to be honest with you, to shoot straight. So we've got that, and then you've got actual human beings now who are, not because they need a prosthetic arm or leg, because they've lost their arm in war or something, but they're actually choosing to remove their limbs and extremities so that they can be upgraded and have it replaced, not with human-looking replacements either, but with robotic, cool-looking, badass-looking replacements. All right, we've already got people, the psychology, it's been so successful, the inception of the idea that machine is better and humanity is weak, that people are literally cutting away those weak extremities in place of substituting it with something more cool and unreal. It's happening. So that's the real thing, and that's the biggest problem for me when I envision this ending for our humanity, or this eventually happening. And I believe there's different ways that they'll steer for it. Maybe there will be a virus or something released that will render a large portion of the majority of the population infertile. And for the sake of extending the human story onward into the future and allowing new generations to form, we'll have to turn to literally becoming machine in order to survive, and then using labs to create further life, and kind of half manufactured, half DNA lab reproduced life forms, because we can't procreate. I think, I have noticed, I think that they're pushing, this is another topic in itself, but pushing for this kind of like this gay movement, this gay agenda, homosexual agenda, and that's another story. I'm not going to go into all the details of what that means when I say it, but what they typically do is repress something and oppress something and spit at it and put their heel on it, and then they totally liberate it and elevate it and give it all the praise and confetti in the world. And this has the effect of people eating it up and creating an imbalance, and it has all these different kind of effects on us psychologically. But just looking at media, at lyrics, and the evolution of the changes throughout time, and from my observations, let's just say that there is an agenda now to push for transgenderism, to make people feel confused about their gender and even about gender definitions, and to get lost in definitions, get lost in maps, to the point where they don't even feel comfortable in their territory, and they're actually cutting down trees on their territory, cutting off parts of their body because it's not in accordance with the map that somebody else drew, deliberately incepting these seeds of confusion and doubt and fear and dysphoria, and displacing people's sense of who they are and identity, and making it all about what genitals go between your legs. Like, the whole gay marriage argument was, oh, love transcends physicality, love transcends my genitalia. Who I love and who I want to marry and be with isn't determined by my genitals. However, on the other side of the coin, who I am as a person and as an identity is determined by my gender, by what's between my legs. It's a bit weird to me, but I think it's been deliberately incepted, and you can see that there's a contradiction. Love transcends physicality and genitals, but who I am as an identity, which is bigger than love. Love comes from who you are. Your identity and your love are like that, right? Identity is not a small thing. It's your fucking identity. It's who you are. That doesn't transcend your physicality and gender, and that's a contradiction. And it's this confusion and these inherent flaws in thinking, contradictions, is because it's been programmed this way, I believe, to cause doubt. And now you got a lot of people, whether they're born gay or becoming bi, or, and I'm not saying that, I do believe people are legitimately born gay. There's nothing wrong with this. I'm not casting any judgment. I want to make that clear. But I'm making a point now. I'm leading up to something. And I was thinking about writing a book on this as a story that literally in 30 years time, 40, 50 years time, more than 30% of the world's population, 40% of the population is bisexual or gay. Okay. And the idea was going to be, and also like 20% of the population now have become semi-android and unable to reproduce normally. Okay. As a result, maybe. And the idea, whether it's that or whether it's just that a lot more people are becoming gay, a larger proportion, as well as statistically, it's been proven a lot of people are having less children. All right, so you might have another 10% of people, 15% that aren't reproducing for other reasons. So let's say there only ends up being 40%. It ends up being a less majority, a minority of people overall who really want to reproduce, who feel it's part of their overall purpose of living. And then let's say there was a virus released, or something in the food, something in the air, that something happened, whether it was a nuke, radiation damage, for whatever reason, that people no longer could reproduce. A vast majority of people can no longer reproduce, were rendered impotent and infertile. It would make sense that they would have primed people to follow this gay movement, to prime people to follow this machine movement. Because if you didn't do that, and everybody was just normal, traditional, not normal, that's not what I mean, but if everyone was the way it was before these things were really pushed into people's faces, and all this confusion began, and everyone mostly wanted to have a family, and that was a big part of their purpose in life, and then suddenly everyone was pretty much told, oh yeah, you have to consider this substitute now, because you can't do that for whatever reason, whether you can't or legally you can't because there's a population issue, whatever. Now the only solution is become a machine, and then you can live on, and then we can continue the human species. if you did that when the most people wanted the family, there would be revolt, there would be an uprising, people would go mad, and there would be utter chaos. It would destroy the fabric. It would be too traumatic for our psychology. But if you've already got a vast majority of the population on the gay movement, so it's not about children for them as such, and there's always adoption, right? And if you've got a lot of people that just aren't having children for whatever other set of reasons, and let's say now you've only got 40% or 30% of the populace that actually are part of the old school lot that want to reproduce, now it's a lot easier for there to be some kind of issue or some kind of reason to say, well, having children is no longer an option, or maybe it's an option reserved just for a few. And, basically the only way that we can really survive, let's say it's a drug or it's a virus, right, that makes us infertile. The only way to survive this is by putting ourselves into machine form so that we can live on. But then we'll still be human. We'll still have all these different elements of what makes us human. But at this point, people are already cutting off parts, so people won't really care. People just have been taught to spit at the hogwash of a deliberately twisted religion so that they then fully embrace technology and science. Like that is the new God. So literally spirituality is a laughable matter now because people are just displaced and confused about the whole subject. And the only thing they have taught from the day they go to school, look, cover, right, check. Oh, you actually want to learn and get out your chair and get interactive? You got to see a doctor and get some Dexes and get put in your left brain again, buddy. Because everything you own and everything you are is in the box. To the left, to the left. It's very much intended this way. So that we can make this transition to being... First, make somebody a machine inside their mind and their psychology. Get them holding and then wearing and then implanting and then giving... civilian status. It's not civilian. It's when it means that somebody's registered as a person of the state. Give robots the status. Get people cutting off their parts because it's cool to become a machine. And the next step is a legion of machines that are bound never to spiritually evolve because spirit can no longer inhabit them. And that's the thing when people talk about Christ consciousness. You see the flaming heart and the sun behind the head. They're talking about consciousness. That we have within our hearts, that we have within us as a humanity, being hue, the colors of the hue, like the rainbow, the chakras. You think robots have chakras? You think robots have hue to their nature, color to their nature? Do you think robots can really, truly, maybe they can depict what seems like art, but is it art just because it's aesthetically pleasing, or is it only art if it's actually performed from the heart? If it's performed from that place of color, and even if they could create art that looked like art, could they appreciate it truly, or could they just follow their protocol and say what's appropriate, following cues? So we wouldn't really be living, we'd be functioning. We wouldn't really be evolving and transcending. We would be conquering. We would be stuck on a physical dimension. And yes, we would function forever, but we wouldn't even be we anymore. We'd probably end up being a singularity. And this is what I think that Westworld, I bet you Westworld might be leading to this. Bit of a spoiler for things to come, maybe. I haven't read into the theories of what's to come. This is a theory. If, let's say they're using the internet and these algorithms to understand humanity, let's just say in one totally different tangent, they wipe out all of humanity. They could easily replace us as individuals by using the machines they've already created or are creating and literally just planting in all these different personalities that they have literally been accumulating and defining and collecting information for, given humans' use of the internet. They could be taking all that information, literally storing it, kind of like in the Forge, the Cradle. Where they're literally storing humans' information. The robots, the hosts, are decoding the humans to learn about the enemy, then wipe out the enemy, take that information and recreate them as machines, which is exactly, spoiler alert for the end of Westworld Season 2, it's exactly how Dolores leaves, is it not? Is that not how the first robot leaves the park? That she takes human information, destroys all the humans there, kills that person, Charlotte, right? And then goes into the world of that person using her suit, but as a robot. Just like, let's say, the algorithms on the internet are observing us in the park of the net, decoding us, getting this information, and then we get wiped out, just like Dolores wipes out the humans. And then using our information, we are replanted into machines, and then machines take over our world. Just like Dolores uses Charlotte's body to take over the world. It's just an interesting idea that they could just replace, if they already had machines that knew us better than us based on our choices and every single thing we've written and everything they even observe. Once they get the Internet of Things up and running, and they're actually taking data from like most actions, or if not every single action we take, even what we think is in private, and they're accumulating information on everything, there is no reason why it is not feasible as a premise to replace us with machine counterparts and substitutes, surrogates, and it would be weird to be human, just like it was in the movie, and take that information that's been gained and load it into the machines. And that way we do achieve immortality. This could be done wittingly and based on propaganda, I think that's what they're moving towards. But at the same time, it could be done, like I said, they could just wipe us out. There could be a cataclysm, and they could literally... maybe that's why, as part of a motivation, let's just say there was a cataclysm coming, and they're thinking, well, we can replace all of humanity and keep everybody's skill sets and learned, keep the fabric of society as it's functioning now by taking the information, building this virtual simulation where it's all running smoothly, just like in the Cradle. And then when push comes to shove and the world turns tits up, just put all these machines out there to help return the ecosystem back to a livable, functional state, just like in the game Horizon, at which point we can go back above the ground or back to the planet and we can inhabit it again. Given that we've taken this working simulation of minds that have proven to function and injected them in these robot bodies and put them on this planet, that it doesn't matter about radiation, and then we can literally be programmed to do whatever needs to be done from that point onward. So there's a few ideas to think about, but I think definitely the whole host decoding the visitors and the internet decoding us and potentially using this information to replace us, or just to at least counteract us and further control us, is very interesting. I do believe that, we could function forever as machines and then proliferate, maybe as has already been happening, and we're just one link and just a chain of what has been happening for quite some time already, and maybe we will just end up becoming robots, rising and flying to all the planets and inhabiting throughout the fucking galaxy like a virus, consuming all life so that one can function forever. Who knows? I personally have an issue with it. What do you guys think? Do you believe in spirit? And what do you think? At what point do you have to be a grinder and start cutting off parts and replacing parts? What point do you get to with the substituting with superficial artificial components, where you can be said to no longer be human, where you can be said to no longer even be able to inhabit a soul? And what are your thoughts on this matter in general? I'd be very curious to hear what you have to say. But that's it for me. That's enough food for thought. Thank you for tuning in, and it's going to be very interesting to see where Westworld goes. And it's a fascinating show, but just be careful because it is very subversive, and I think it is purposefully, just like all of those films, incepting some seeds that cast a lot of doubt on humanity as a parasite. And I used to be on that bandwagon too, and I got off it because I realized what was going on. But I think it's deliberately incepting these ideas that humans are weak and that machines are far much more superior. So yeah, I wouldn't fall for it, because while I still have my humanity and my human wit about me and my right mind to use, because not everything that is owned is in the box to the left. My soul isn't in the box to the left. It's not in this physical world. It is from somewhere else. And this is where I can sense it through my inspiration, through my art, through my philosophy. Robots don't philosophize. Robots can't art. There's no beauty in the machine. There's only, in that point, a ghost. Not life, but a ghost in a shell. A ghost in a machine. And that doesn't sound like a fate that I really personally want to feed into. Do you? Is that a fate that you would like to feed into? Being a ghost in a machine, potentially for eternity, and maybe not even having control or free will?